Hey guys, Hop here. I occasionally get questions about my carry guns, but I don't make videos about them very often because they're really not all that special and they don't change very frequently. I'm also not one of those gun nerds that has a carry rotation where I have a bunch of different pieces depending on the outfit or the mood, whatever strikes my fancy as I'm walking out the door. The first handgun that I ever bought was a Generation 3 Glock 19, and aside from a brief period of time where I carried a Star M43 Firestar, don't ask. Mostly, I've just carried that Glock 19 until I picked up a used Glock 43 from a buddy of mine, and then that became, my warm weather or slightly deeper concealment carry pistol. I'm a basic bitch Glock guy. I like to shoot Glocks. I like to carry Glocks, or at least passable Glock clones. For a while, I did carry a Shadow Systems MR920. However, I benched that when I decided to stop carrying pistols with optics on them. We'll talk about that more in the video. But I went back to alternating between the Glock 43 and the Glock 19. But recently I thought maybe it's time to start carrying pistols with optics again. So I made some changes to the MR920 and some changes to the Gen 3 Glock 19. We're going to talk about both of those and see which one of them I actually end up carrying after this video. Stick around. Glocks. I like them. Today's video is made possible by our channel sponsor, Blue Alpha. Very fitting for a video about concealed carry because a good stiff belt makes it a lot easier to carry a firearm comfortably. Blue Alpha makes the best EDC gun belts in the world. Here's me using my original one 5 years ago, and here's me using my newer one a couple days ago. My original Blue Alpha hybrid EDC belt isn't worn out. These things are probably indestructible. I just got the black one so I could have two different colors of belt. Check out the link to Blue Alpha in the video description for EDC gun belts, 2-layer battle belts, magazine pouches, dump pouches, and all sorts of other accessories that go with them. Thank you to Blue Alpha for supporting this channel. Thank you guys for watching. Let's get back into it. So this is my Shadow Systems MR920. I started carrying this instead of my Glock 19 because I like the optics cut. This allows you to directly mount a Holosun EPS, which is pretty much the best red dot on the market for pistols. And you can mount it directly. No optics plates, so a more secure connection, and it co-witnesses through the standard height iron sights. Pretty excellent. Unfortunately, the trigger on the MR920 is really bad. I don't know why Shadow Systems triggers seem to be pretty much always bad all the time. Every once in a while somebody will say they're actually good, but I don't know, maybe they get like a lucky one or they're just insane. So at some point I was like, you know what, I'll try to upgrade the trigger, just see if something is out there that's a little bit better. So I dropped in an Apex trigger. Ben Steger I think has spoken highly of these, so I thought, that's probably a good one to try. But because I put an aftermarket trigger into a gun, didn't really trust it, not the least which because this is not actually a Glock, so although it's basically Gen 3 Glock parts compatible, it's not technically a Gen 3 Glock, so I was like, if it's a possibility that maybe this trigger is not going to be 100% reliable in this pistol. So in the meantime, I was like, well, all right, we'll try this for a while and see if it works, but I went back to carrying my iron-sighted Gen 3 Glock 19. I was also carrying my Glock 43 a lot of the time, so I'm basically carrying two different pistols with iron sights, and that's because I was reviewing a lot of handguns that had optics cuts. Everything's got an optics cut, trying out a bunch of different pistol red dots, doing all the shooting with different grip angles, different slide profiles, different presentations from the holster, and just finding that like transitioning back to a Glock with a red dot was difficult after shooting everything but Glock, because of course Glock has a very unique, very singular grip angle, and although I do like it, it's pretty uncommon. So almost every pistol that I would pick up and review or shoot at an event or whatever would just have a completely different feel. So that was kind of my MO. All of the guns that I shoot for review or that I shoot at events are going to probably have red dots on them, and they're going to have weird grip angles, weird to me as a Glock guy. And so then when I go back to carrying my guns, instead of having to spend some time re-familiarizing myself with the Glock angle, the Glock building a grip on the draw, acquiring a red dot sight picture from the draw, I'm just going to go back to iron sights because it seems like no matter what I do, I can always get a good sight picture with iron sights with Glocks. Like that's the thing that even to this day I've spent the most time and the most rounds practicing with is Glock iron sights. So the MR920 temporarily benched because it has an aftermarket trigger in it that I don't quite trust yet. I was mostly carrying my Glock 43 and my Glock 19 with the stock iron sights. But then Glock released the MOS slides for the Generation 3 Glocks. Mostly, I think they just did this for the California market because California has a pistol roster, and the only Glock models that are on the California pistol roster are the Gen 3s. So if you want to get an optics-ready Glock in California, you have to send your Generation 3 off to get cut. I'm not normally a big fan of the Glock MOS system because it uses optics plates, which means the optics sit a little bit higher, and then the optic is bolted into the plate is bolted into the slide. That's doubling up on the number of fasteners, the number of interfaces that can come loose. So really not an appealing system. Also, I don't think Glock really nailed that optics plate system the same way that some other manufacturers did. So normally, I would not be really keen on getting, a Gen 5 MOS Glock. One of the reasons that I never bothered to replace my Gen 3 Glock with a Gen 4 or Gen 5. However, the Holosun SCS, the solar charging sight, was kind of appealing to me because it sits so low, it is direct mounted, so no optics plate, so we're not doubling up on the interfaces, and it sits low enough to co-witness through the stock Glock iron sights. And I literally have no problem with stock Glock bucket sights. Also, I like to have backup iron sights that co-witness through my pistol red dot. Call me a FUD if you'd like, that's totally fine. However, I've seen pistol red dots do some weird shit. So as much as I appreciate their capability, I don't exactly trust them. So the release of a Gen 3 compatible aftermarket slide that you could get directly from Glock for not a whole lot of money that had an MOS cut kind of seemed like a good opportunity to try out the Holosun SCS, as well as get back into carrying a pistol red dot, because I do think it's a good idea. It absolutely allows you to be faster and more accurate at longer ranges than with stock iron sights. So it's, of course, a good idea. And I've also been kind of getting less into trying out different pistols. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still happy with Glocks. So as much as there are some nice competitors out there, most of the pistols that I'm going to shoot and talk about on this channel going forward are going to be old retro handguns. That's still my main interest in firearms collecting is old pistols from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. Almost all of those are going to be iron-sighted pistols with weird-ass grip angles. So if I go ahead and get back into carrying and shooting Glocks with red dots, I think it'll be okay. There's just one tiny problem. This is a factory drop-in Glock part. It looks like a Gen 5 MOS slide. It's got the front serrations, it's got the MOS cut, it's got the newer, I think it's the DLC coating instead of the older Tenifer coating. So my original Gen 3 Glock has that really nice matte gray finish. This has the shinier, more dark black finish. But putting this slide with an Optigon onto my Generation 3 Glock frame and not changing any other parts fucking torpedoed the reliability of this pistol. Generation 3 Glocks, as you may know, have a really nasty reputation for ejecting brass all over the place. So as you go through the magazine, your ejection starts out to the right like you'd expect. Sometimes one or two will go off the left side of the pistol for just like no reason whatsoever. And then a couple of them will go straight back into your face, especially the last round in the magazine. The last round almost always goes straight back into your face. Classic Glock ejection pattern. Some people will drop in a replacement extractor by Apex to fix that problem. I actually bought one of those because my old Gen 3 Glock had the typical completely wild fucking haymaker ejection, typical of Gen 3 Glocks. So I put the Apex extractor in there and it improved things a little bit for a couple hundred rounds, and then it went right back to normal. So did not seem like a worthwhile upgrade. Also for an extractor, it's an incredibly expensive part. But as wild as that ejection pattern is on Generation 3 Glocks, I've never seen it actually cause an issue. It's just an annoyance. However, once I put this Gen 5 style MOS Gen 3 slide on here, that ejection pattern went from wild to insane, and it started causing malfunctions. What it seems like what's happening is the rounds that are ejecting straight back on a normal iron-sighted Glock would just eject backwards into the operator's face. Annoying, stupid, unnecessary, but not really a critical issue. When there's an optic here, they start to eject backwards, hit the optic, and go straight back into the action. So I was getting a lot of stovepipe malfunctions once I put the slide on without changing any other parts. So we took a completely functional Generation 3 Glock, put a factory Gen 5 style slide onto it, and broke the gun. But there is a pretty well-established fix for the Generation 3 Glock ejection problem, and that is to install a Gen 5 ejector. The ejector on the Glocks has been updated a couple times over the years. The Gen 4 had a slightly reprofiled one, and the Gen 5 has a substantially different ejector style. And there's no reason that you couldn't put the Gen 4 or Gen 5 ejector into a Gen 3 Glock. The only reason Glock themselves haven't done it is probably because they don't want to risk their roster status in California. So I finally went ahead and I picked up a Gen 5 rear trigger housing and then harvested the ejector out of it, put it into my Gen 3 trigger housing, and took this thing to the range, tested it out.
It's a thing of beauty, Luke.
It works.
I scarce believe it.
The ejection is now beautiful, immaculate. I have installed Gen 5 ejection into my Gen 3 Glock and completely fixed the reliability issues, and it also now does not eject anywhere close to the optic, meaning I don't get stovepipes, I don't get casings rebounding off the optic back into the action. So this Gen 3, Gen 5 MOS Glock hybrid is actually really nice now. It shoots probably better than the gun ever has the entire time that I've owned it. It's reliable. I like having an optic. Again, still not 100% sure if I'm going to want to stick with the SCS long term. The window of the optic is small. I certainly prefer the window of the EPS, but this is extremely low profile. Mainly, I just don't like the green. I like a red dot. I don't like a green dot so much. Holosun's claim is that they're so efficient with green dots that they don't need to use red dots to save power anymore. Sure, okay, great, thanks. I'd still like a red dot though, please, thank you. But yeah, no such option with the SCS. It's green or nothing. But yeah, my Generation 3 Glock 19 has now been upgraded with a red dot. I need to get a new weapon light. I broke the lens on my TLR7. Streamlight might replace that for me if I ask him nicely, because that is a replaceable component. But yeah, we have a, it's my kind of carry gun, man. It is a Generation 3 Glock with Generation 3 Glock trigger and ergos, and a red dot on it that I didn't have to get it milled. It's not RMR cut, so I don't have to worry about the screws of the optic intruding into the ejector rod channel or extractor rod channel. So yeah, this is pretty nice. Although the more that I shoot this versus the MR920, the more I kind of think the grip on the MR920 is more conducive to building a grip as you draw the gun from the holster. So how about the MR920? Well, I did really like carrying this gun for a long time. I really, really like the Holosun EPS direct mounted. It's easier for me to build my grip on this pistol while it's still in the holster, drawing, from appendix. And if you have a proper grip, you are much more likely to get a proper sight picture on the draw. That's one of the things that I think you really have to kind of focus on when you're practicing with a red dot equipped pistol. If your grip is consistent, then you're going to be able to build the muscle memory to acquire the red dot on the draw. If your grip is all over the place, then you're kind of fucked. And if you're drawing in a hurry from an inside the waistband holster, it's not always easy to get that completely repeatable grip in exactly the same place, because the pistol, might move around in your waistband, the holster might not be in the right place, or, you might just have interference with trying to get your fingers around the belt, around the pistol, whatever. The point being, this grip, to me, is more conducive to getting a proper grip on the draw. So, I do like the grip. I like the optics mounting. I like the iron sights. The pistol shoots really nice. Shadow Systems pistols have dog shit triggers, so I put this Apex trigger in there. I put about 400 rounds through it, had no malfunctions, thought, okay, now it's probably about time that I start trusting this trigger. Took it out the other day, and I started having complete fucking trigger failures. And now I just don't know, man.
I'm just going to shoot up some very old 124 grain plus B HSTs, because it's about time I cycled out my carry ammo. Ah, fuck. That is the first issue that I've had with the Apex. Probably about 400 rounds through this pistol with the Apex trigger in it, which to me was a good sign that it was working and I could trust it. This could be one of those classic times where the break-in period is actually just a break period. Gun's broken.
Basically, when pulled to the rear, the trigger would fail to drop the striker. You could pull it all the way to the rear and nothing would happen. And then, if you really wanted to, you could do that cringe nonsense that a bunch of fucking anti-sigfluencers are doing on the internet now. Wiggle the slide, and that would actually create enough motion in the striker or steer interface to drop the striker. Took the pistol apart, put it back together again, cleaned up some of the parts, and it started working again. So that was fun, but it was not exactly encouraging. The Apex trigger in the MR920 is absolutely better than the stock Shadow Systems trigger. I don't know why the stock Shadow Systems trigger, which is basically just a clone of Gen 3 and on Glocks, is so bad. But yeah, it is. It's creepy, it's stagey, it's spongy, the break is inconsistent. It is just substantially worse than a stock Glock trigger. And when I would shoot other pistols that had normal triggers and then go back to the MR920, it would fuck me up. Like, I would have trigger freeze, I would have completely mistimed recoil control. Like, it was not good. The Apex trigger, honestly, I would take a stock Glock trigger over the Apex trigger. This is not quite as good as a stock Glock trigger to me, especially a broken-in Gen 3 or a good, Gen 5. The reliability issues are really what kill this thing for me. And that's not a knock on Apex or Shadow Systems. I just don't know if they're meant to go together, or, I just got a fucked up one. Or maybe, 400 rounds isn't enough break-in. Maybe I gotta go like 600 before this thing is actually safely broken in and properly reliable. Anyway, the moral of the story is that I attempted to upgrade both of my preferred carry Glocks, and I broke both of them, but at least one of them started working again. The Glock 43 still gets the most carry action because it's the smallest, it's the most comfortable and easy to carry. I feel like it's probably fine. I have Vickers magazine extensions on this, so this is a 6-round mag with a +2 extension. This has a TLR 6HL, which is actually a pretty substantial weapon light once they bumped up the lumens quite a lot. And yeah, still has stock Glock bucket iron sights. They're a little bit dinged up because periodically when I would practice with this pistol and do some drills, if I fucked up really bad, I would throw it. Would I like to upgrade to a 43X? I guess. I'm just not that motivated to go buy a new pistol and new magazines and new holsters and all that sort of stuff. Same thing with these two pistols. Would I like to get a Generation 5 Glock 19 MOS and put that same optic on there? I mean, sure, it probably would be an improvement. The trigger would be better out of the box. The different grip, shape, and texture is an improvement, certainly. But again, I've got Gen 3 Glock holsters. I've got everything that I need to make these guns work, and I'm not super motivated to buy a new pistol and some new parts to go with them. As for what I'm going to do with the MR920, I'm not sure. I do really like this gun. I like that it's 100% Glock holster compatible, and it has the really nice optics cut and the good iron sights. I appreciate the grip shape, grip texture. The trigger is it's just messing me up, and I don't know. I'm not really sure that this thing is worth tinkering with anymore. But I guess we'll see going forward. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, of course. Check out the links in the video description for ways to support the channel, and I will see you next time.